Could your home building contract leave you drowning in unexpected bills, endless delays, shady workmanship, and a flawed, disappointing home in the end?
What I hear a lot from clients is that they didn't get what they were told they were going to have.
Preston Kincaid, a board-certified master inspector and owner of Kincaid Services Home Inspection, will share insights that might confirm your suspicions or reveal things you never even considered. So, how can you make sure your investment is secure and your project runs smoothly? A strong, solid contract begins with a clearly defined scope of work. It outlines exactly what's included, what's not, and the quality you should expect. Now, why does this matter? Because vague language, like for example, install flooring, can lead to cheap substitutes or low-grade materials. Instead of something like finish the project in 6 months, a well-structured contract breaks the work down into clear phases with specific deadlines. For example, site preparation by March 15th, 2025. Foundation completed by April 15th, 2025, and framing completed by July 15th, 2025. This approach sets checkpoints to keep the project on track, but deadlines lose their power without enforcement. So, clauses like missing deadlines will be considered a breach of contract, or penalties of $500 a day keep builders accountable and keep projects moving forward. Make sure your contract states the total project costs upfront and includes payment schedules tied to milestones. If most payments are made too early, unfinished work can become a problem. That's why including a retainage clause, which holds back 5 to 10% of the payment until the project is fully complete, keeps the builder motivated and ensures the quality you're paying for. Preston Kincaid has been through this before. Let's hear what he thinks.
What I hear a lot from clients is that they didn't get what they were told they were going to have. And that usually falls back on verbal commitments, verbal promises, or changes along the way that were above scope. For example, I have one client right now who she got exactly what she contracted for, but she had asked for a lot of things along the way and never got it in writing. And so it's important to make sure you read your agreement or your contracts to know what you're paying for, to know what's in the contract. And if you ask for anything, or if any situation arises that causes a change in that scope, make sure you get a change order, you get something in writing that shows what you're going to be given. And sometimes these are situational. Sometimes they hit a roadblock with certain things and they'll find a workaround for it. So maybe it doesn't incur extra cost, but sometimes if you don't get that change in writing, you won't see it in the finished product. And so every time I've heard of people who are having a home built, the additional costs usually revolve around things that they wanted or requested and didn't get in writing. They were just told verbally they would get it, and at the end, it turned out they'd have to pay more for it.
How do you ensure that the work meets your expectations? Your contract should lay out clear performance standards, such as the International Building Code, ANSI standards, or ASTM International standards, to make sure that materials and workmanship meet industry requirements. For instance, you could state, all plumbing fixtures shall comply with ASTM F2159 for watertight seals. But contract terms aside for a while, how can you spot bad workmanship before it's too late? We asked our guest expert what warning signs homeowners should look out for.
Most of the stuff is very obvious. You start to see really shoddy workmanship. You see lumber and dimensional lumber cut with bad angles, and they'll put 50 nails in it. So the first thing I would say is anything that looks like shoddy work, anything that looks questionable, probably is, because nice workmanship looks like nice workmanship. And when you see people kind of scabbing things together and just kind of, slapping it together, or if you see concealment, things that normally wouldn't be covered up, if you see that people are covering it up, call your inspector, have him go check it out. It's sometimes only a 10-minute visit, but they can get up there and look and say, why is this happening? So the first thing I would say is, if you see something, say something. If it looks unusual, definitely be a part of it. This is a home, for God's sake. I mean, this isn't some meaningless little thing. This is something you potentially will live in the rest of your life. So it matters. And those extra few minutes and those extra few eyeballs make a huge difference.
You also might want to look into warranties, like a 1-year workmanship warranty to cover things like uneven flooring or poorly installed fixtures. A 10-year structural warranty for bigger issues like foundation cracks or roof leaks. And a design and build warranty to make sure the architectural and engineering work meets your expectations. Let's hear what Preston has to say about which warranties might really protect your home.
The warranties, the only warranty that I offer and believe in are the ones offered by InterNACHI, which is the certifying organization for home inspectors. InterNACHI is partnered with a company called Elite MGA, and these are the only warranties that I think are not a scam. Most home warranties, if you read the fine print, they have ways of wiggling out of most claims. InterNACHI covering the inspector and also having warranty products for the consumer, the buyer, going through Elite MGA, who owns their own insurance company. These warranties are, I see these all the time, especially in our private Facebook group. These warranties are paid, like claims are paid. They cover a lot of things. It's a much broader coverage. And so that's why those are the only warranties that I offer.
A strong contract protects you from delays, hidden costs, and legal loopholes. That's why having a lawyer review it up front can ensure all critical details are covered.
And this is where a lawyer can be a good thing up front, to look at the contract to make sure the right exit ramps, termination clauses, things can be built into those so that you have a step. If you're in a project and things are going terribly, you shouldn't have to continue in that relationship. There should be ways to get out of it and find somebody that can finish the project for you properly.
Even with a strong contract, some things are hard to predict. Unexpected expenses like additional site preparation, rising material costs, or design changes can still throw off your budget. You buy a lot thinking it's ready to build, but then you find out trees need clearing, the ground isn't level, or the soil needs excavation, adding $1,000 to even $15,000. To prevent surprises, ensure your contract defines if site preparation is part of the deal and provides an estimate of the costs. Permits and inspections aren't optional. They're essential and can cost anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000, depending on your location. Your contract should clearly state who is responsible for these costs. Otherwise, the costs automatically fall on you. Extending water, sewer, electricity, or gas lines can cost $5,000 to $20,000, or even more in rural areas. Just like with permits, make sure your contract clearly states who is responsible for covering these costs. Include a fixed price agreement or a material escalation clause, such as if material costs increase by more than 5%, the builder must notify the client and renegotiate terms. Switching materials or layouts mid-project can quickly add thousands of dollars to your budget. For example, upgrading from laminate to quartz countertops might cost an extra $5,000. A strong contract includes a formal change order process requiring your written approval for modifications. This keeps you in control of your costs. Landscaping, driveways, and patios are often left out of contracts that focus solely on the house. Adding these later can cost another $5,000 to $20,000. If outdoor features are part of your vision, make sure they're included in the initial agreement. You cannot predict every challenge, but a contingency fund can help you stay prepared. Experts recommend setting aside 5 to 15% of your budget to cover delays, structural surprises, or overlooked expenses. Have you ever faced hidden costs or unclear terms in a construction contract? How did it impact your building process? Please share your story in the comments. It might save someone else from going through the same problems. Builders may cut corners by using cheaper materials while charging for premium ones. Preston Kincaid shares when problems usually start and why.
There's phases of construction, okay? And every phase, this is why they call them phase inspections. And if there's a bank involved that's funding these renovations or this building, usually they call them draw inspections. But each of those has its own phase. And so what you're going to want to have is, anytime you're pouring a foundation of any kind, you're going to want to have somebody inspect the forms, the footings, whatever they're doing, to make sure the rebar, all those things are done properly. Once they get the foundation in place and they start framing, you definitely want to have the phase inspection for the framing, pre-drywall. Now, pre-drywall is later on, but that's something that's one of the most important steps, because you want to look for all the stub outs for the plumbing and the electrical, your outlets, receptacles, switches. You want to make sure nail plates are over electrical wiring where they need to be. And you want to do that all before they cover it up with drywall. So once you figure out all the phases of construction, talk with your inspector about creating a phased plan and have those inspections done at every one of those phases. Don't skip one. And it's okay to have eyeballs on things along the way. I'll give you an example. One of the things we see often that most buyers or homeowners or consumers are kind of oblivious to is things like your lumber, your trusses, your different building materials sitting outside in the rain. And if they're not covered and they're getting wet and they're just sitting out there, this can promote mold growth. So a lot of times you'll see mold on the actual framing members themselves, on components, roof sheathing with mold that was on there before the house even, got constructed. And so if you see, your material sitting outside in the rain, definitely say something, have it inspected, have somebody look at it. Also, a good sign of good workmanship and professional building is a clean workplace. This is often overlooked. If you go by the job site and it looks like a train wreck and there's just trash everywhere and they don't clean up at the end of the day, if it looks like a landfill when you go by it, that's a good sign that they are not spending the amount of time and attention on your project that they should. And this is not something that most professional builders and people who take pride in their work would be doing.
And this is where the need for extra protection comes in.
And this falls back to the original question, which is why it's super important to make sure that you have the ability to have a third-party inspector be part of the process. You want somebody on your side, not an inspector that works for the builder, because those inspectors are going to be beholden to that builder because that's where their bread and butter comes from. Your own inspector is going to report back to you, and he's going to be able to say, look, you were told that the vinyl siding was going to have house wrap behind it, some sort of WRB like Tyvek, and what they're putting up is inferior, or maybe it doesn't exist. Having a skilled professional that knows the difference in the materials in the process is so important, and this is why a third-party inspector that you've hired is crucial.
Independent inspections and lawyers add an extra layer of protection. Without one, you might overlook serious issues like poor framing, inadequate waterproofing, or safety violations, which could lead to costly repairs later. So, if something does go wrong, here's what our expert suggests.
So if it's a defect or if it's an issue that the client themselves sees, it's important to document it. Take pictures of it, take video of it, somehow document that defect. And if you have a third-party inspector, if you've hired your own inspector to be a part of the process, send those photos or videos to that person and have them reach out to the builder, or reach out to the builder immediately. But this is also one of those things you want to make sure you get in writing. Send it by email so there's a date and time stamp. Send correspondence by text message or something that you can use in court later that will help to support your argument. So often people do this verbally, or they'll do it over the phone, and they're told, oh, no problem, no problem, it'll be done, later when we put something else on. And then it just doesn't, because they didn't get it in writing and it wasn't documented.
That's why spending $300 up to $1,000 per visit is worth it to catch problems early. Schedule a final walkthrough with your inspector before making the last payment to ensure everything is done right. Still wondering how important home inspections really are? Before we go, here's Preston Kincaid's final advice.
Well, the biggest one is, number one, never waive a home inspection. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a lot of waived inspection. People that are desperate for a home, so they skip those crucial steps. They just trust that they're going to get something that's right. The phase inspections are so important with a third-party inspector. I can't even stress that enough. And it isn't because I'm biased, because I'm an inspector. It's because in the industry, we see these problems day in and day out. And it's rife. You can see it all throughout social media. All the new build inspectors are just finding a lot of the same stuff. It's important for them to understand that, especially when you're talking about big corporate, multi-million dollar, some are multi-billion dollar building companies. When you're dealing with those guys, you have to realize that they are, number one, they're not always hands-on. They're not always well managed. And frankly, they are a business. Their business is to stamp out as many homes as fast as possible at the highest profit margin. And you don't want to be the person making up that margin. If you're given something with shoddy workmanship and they did it cheaply because they skipped a lot of the stuff they needed to have, then you're picking up that margin and they're making the money on it. Another thing that's really important is your 1-year warranty inspection. That's usually done at the 11-month mark. And that warranty inspection is basically your last chance to make sure the builder does anything that they didn't do that was caught by your inspector. So, your 1-year warranty inspections, don't miss those. Those are really, really important. The other thing is not to be too trusting. People need to assume that everybody's trying to rip them off when they're going into these situations and act accordingly. Now, that's a good expectation to have going in. Go in expecting to get ripped off, because then you will act accordingly. And if the builder is a good, reputable builder, they're doing a good job, then you're just going to be pleasantly surprised. So it's a good setting of the expectation. The other thing is also to know that most builders want to do a good job. Nobody's doing poor work because they want to. They're doing it because either they missed it, they had inexperienced subcontractors working on stuff and they didn't catch it. So most good builders want to have a good inspector looking at things. They want to deliver a quality final product. If you're not getting that sense from your builder, then maybe they weren't the right builder for you, or maybe it's a time to have a talk with them to say, I don't really feel like you want to build something with good workmanship here. Never assume that everything is going to go as planned. Things happen. And, builders, they build homes every day, but they run into things that aren't always ideal also. Sometimes it's okay to give the builders the benefit of the doubt, give them a little leeway in understanding. Building materials don't always perform as is expected. Sometimes concrete, comes from the plant and it's not properly mixed, or there's lots of things that can happen along the way. And it's always good to give somebody the opportunity to make it right and fix it. But also don't become a doormat and don't let that go too far, because if you give them an inch, they'll take it a mile. It's okay to hold boundaries and to be firm in your project. And a little due diligence goes a long way. Find a good builder before you enter into an agreement, and make sure that you realize it's a relationship. Building a house doesn't happen overnight. But having your lawyer and your third-party inspector up front are the two most important things I can think of.
So double check every detail before making your final payment, because once you close the deal, fixing issues becomes much harder. Subscribe to stay in control and fully informed throughout the home building process. Remember, you have the power to shape your contract with the builder. With a proactive approach, you can guarantee the home you're investing in is exactly what you want. Thanks for watching. Until the next one.